Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Stronger Than Steel podcast, Season 6, Episode 17. I am John Keir, and that is Austin Davidson, my co-host. Welcome back to the show, Austin.
Hello,
how you doing?
I'm doing great.
So this will be our second reintroduction back to the show after our last attempt earlier in the month was lost due to technical failure, which we have way too often. It's embarrassing, to be honest with you. It sucks, but hey, you know what? It's fun. That's why we do it. We have fun, and you know what? All I could do after all that mess a couple weeks ago was just laugh, and it was a good laugh.
Yeah, we talked for so long about so many things. We talked about college football. We talked about going into the Cowboys Hall of Fame game, and then I never pressed record on my Audacity. So we lost it all. I mean, we had John's half. It wouldn't have really made much sense without hearing what I also said to make John say what he said, so we couldn't post it, but this time it is definitely recording, as I sporadically am checking it now, because now I'm anxious that I didn't hit it, but I'm watching it go as I speak. So we're good this time. This one you're going to hear.
Yeah, I think we've all been involved in things like that where it's something where you work really hard, and then when you finally realize what's happened, it really is just a gut punch, but that's okay. We're here now. That's all that matters, and we're looking ahead towards the Steelers' 2020 season. We're halfway through the preseason as we speak. It is August 19th, late on August 19th. The Steelers just completed some roster cuts. We have a whole bunch of things to talk about since our last episode that we talked about, or that we had talked about a lot of the players that the Steelers had drafted, and it was just shortly after the NFL draft. Since then, obviously, there's been a lot going on between OTAs and mandatory minicamp, and obviously training camp, let alone the first few weeks of the preseason here. Where do you want to start? Do you want us to talk about the Hall of Fame weekend and that? Do you want to talk about some of the free agency signings and trade acquisitions? Do you want to talk about the games themselves? Where do you want to go today, Austin? How do you want to start this?
I think we'll talk about the Hall of Fame game first, because I think that talking about the Hall of Fame game, we'll talk about some of the stuff that happened in training camp that led us to believe certain things, going in. I feel like the Hall of Fame game is a good place to start.
All right. Well, how about first we'll start right next to that. We'll start with the actual Hall of Fame induction of 5 different Steelers. Bill Nunn... I forgot. Is he junior or senior? Oh, I'm so sorry.
I don't remember.
Bill Nunn.
I think he's senior?
No, he's junior. My apologies. Bill Nunn Jr., yes. Former scout for the Pittsburgh Steelers, worked with the team from, I want to say, 1970 to 2014, which I believe is the year that he passed. So a true Steeler through in and throughout, and helped build the teams of the 1970s. Alan Faneca, a member of the Steelers' 2005 Super Bowl winning team, 6-time first-team All-Pro. And those were the guys inducted on Sunday, and on Saturday there were 3 former Steelers. Former safety from the Steel Curtain days, Donnie Shell, former head coach Bill Cowher, and, of course, safety Troy Polamalu. Big weekend in Canton for Pittsburgh. Probably the only time the 5 Steelers will ever be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I don't know if you got to watch any of it. I watched pretty much every speech. I didn't like that they shortened it, but shortened each speech, but I understood why they did. I thought it was a very entertaining event, a very entertaining weekend.
Yeah, I got to see a little bit of it. I thought that it was all well-deserved for all those guys. I mean, especially Bill Nunn. I mean, I feel like he is underrated and needed to get in. I mean, the draft classes that he brought in are amazing. Like, there's nothing, you can't undermine that. He's brought in some really, really amazing talent in his time, and he really needed to make it in. Obviously, the other guys were very deserving too, but Nunn was a Pittsburgh guy through and through, born there, basically spent his entire time there, other than going to college. But yeah, I was very excited for all that. And I I echo your sentiment about the speeches being too short. I know, like you said, it has to happen so that everyone gets their time to speak, so that they don't go over with the TV programming and stuff. But I wish you could have gotten a little bit more time.
And especially, I also would have liked to have seen the video tributes they had for the deceased members that were being inducted, like a Bill Nunn, and there were several others that were inducted that were not there. I was hoping to see more about them, but sadly, that was only available online and in person, obviously. About Bill Nunn, I mean, you could point to the 1974 draft and see his influence there. Obviously, he wasn't responsible for all the picks, but Bill Nunn was a big part of the introduction of these small, historically black colleges that saw these little-known athletes become superstars. And in 1974, John Stallworth and Donnie Shell, now two Hall of Famers, were a huge part of that. And just think about that 74 draft. They had the four Hall of Famers drafted with Swan, Stallworth, Lambert, and Webster, but now, even though he wasn't an official part of the draft class, Donnie Shell, an undrafted free agent, becomes the fifth Hall of Famer from that class to go into the Hall of Fame. I don't think any other draft classes had more than two, so it really just goes to show what a profound impact he had on the Pittsburgh Steelers and really the NFL and black colleges overall.
Yeah, it's most certainly it's probably not gonna happen again. It's very improbable that a team gets such a good draft class, especially with how things have expanded now to be able to be more, it's easier to go from one college to view a guy. You hear about a guy even at smaller schools a little bit easier now. It's just it's not gonna be as easy, and Bill Nunn kind of paved the way, so I really appreciate that he made it in this year.
Of the four Steelers speeches that you got to see, that were available to be seen, did you see them, and whose was your favorite?
I really didn't get to see much of them. I only really saw, unfortunately, like Peyton Manning's, and I saw some of Troy Polamalu's, so I guess I have to go by Troy Polamalu by default, but I honestly didn't really get to see that much.
I gotcha. Yeah, he had a really good speech. I thought Bill Cowher had a good one. I thought Alan Faneca did too, and Donnie Shell. I mean, they were all really good. I think Peyton was probably the best. That was the number one example of why they should have had speeches lasting more than 10 minutes. But, I mean, he also wasted like the first three with jokes, which is, it was funny though. I'll give him that. That guy's definitely charismatic. So, looking forward to seeing more of him, and we're going to be seeing him and Eli in an alternate broadcast on Monday night.
That's going to be so weird.
I want to give it a chance because I think that could be really cool, but I'm kind of unsure about it.
It's just it's like, I don't know, like, it feels like those guys should still be playing. It feels like both of them are like they still feel part of the league,
Well, it doesn't seem right that Peyton should be in the Hall of Fame because it really doesn't feel like he retired that long ago. And I mean, really, his last game, Super Bowl 50, was just over 5 years ago, which obviously lines up with him going in the Hall of Fame. But it's still just kind of wild. Just goes to show you we're getting old. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, and then Eli retiring just a couple years ago too. It's strange, but it also makes you appreciate the guys that are still around. I was looking at somewhere with Larry Fitzgerald, the free agent. There's only two players left from the 2004 NFL draft class, and I think it's just Tom Brady left from prior to the 2004 season. So I started watching football in 2000. Like, I remember watching football games in 2002 during that season, and there's pretty much, as far as I know, there's just one or two players left. Everyone else is gone.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, the players that you first started watching are almost all gone.
And a huge chunk of them have been retired for a decade now, too. And it's funny because I remember thinking about 10 years ago when the Steelers were coming off their last Super Bowl appearance, and that being 10 years ago, the guys that were rookies in that league, like Marquise Pouncey was a rookie that season. He just retired, and he played 11 seasons. Like, he's gone. And a lot of those younger guys are now grizzled vets, and a lot of the guys that were entering the league when I went into college in 2014 are now grizzled vets too. And heck, I mean, let's talk about the guys who were rookies when we started this podcast 5 years ago this upcoming year. Artie Burns, Sean Davis, Javon Hargrave, now well into their second contracts, or if you're Sean Davis and Artie Burns, third contracts because they were cut. But that is neither here nor there.
4 contracts
Anyways,
for Davis. 4.
Yeah, 4 contracts. We let's get back on track here. So the Hall of Fame game, which actually took place before the Hall of Fame ceremonies over the Hall of Fame weekend. The Steelers won the first game of the season in the rescheduled Hall of Fame game. This was supposed to be the one played last year, but obviously did not happen due to the fact that there were no preseason games played. Initial impressions from this game, you want to kind of start just kind of looking position-wise, or do you want to just do kind of themes or thoughts from this game?
I like position-wise. I'm a fan because I feel like it's easier to break it down that way. Organize my thoughts. So I'll start with the quarterbacks if that's okay with you.
Yeah, go for
so
it.
A lot of people left this game because it wasn't the barn burner that people were expecting. Usually preseason games tend to be a lot of points, a lot of scoring and stuff, and a lot of people are like hammering the over. Please don't bet on preseason games. I saw Pat McAfee saying hammer the over for this game, and this is exactly why you don't. You have no idea. You have less idea of what's going on than you do in a regular game. Anyway, back to the point of quarterbacks. People left this game saying that, oh, Haskins looks so good and so much better than Mason Rudolph. And I felt like as a whole, like they were kind of on par with each other. It's just there's different skill sets, and I think that Dwayne Haskins is more what Steelers fans want, so they're pushing it. I'm like a big Mason Rudolph hater. I've hated that pick since the beginning, but like leaving this game, I thought both quarterbacks did okay. I thought they did good. I wouldn't say anything amazing, but Mason finished with the better rating and more yards on less passes, so you take that as you will. But really, the best quarterback of the day was probably Josh Dobbs. He looked amazing as the preseason legend now. I feel like he's earned the role as preseason quarterback legend for the Steelers after being like really good the past 3 off seasons they've had him. So overall, I thought the quarterbacks did well. Dobbs scored the only touchdown of the day passing. I feel like there's not much else to say that other than Rudolph and Haskins were on par. Just they're different kinds of quarterbacks. And I didn't really feel like Haskins looked much better. In fact, I thought if anyone looked better, I thought it was a little bit of Rudolph.
Yeah, I really think that these guys were pretty across the board, not all that impressive. I mean, Mason Rudolph had his most promising drive ended due to a fumbled exchange between him and Chase Claypool on a jet sweep, which you'd rather see now than in the regular season. I will grant you that. Also had a pretty impressive sideline throw to, it was Chase Claypool, where Claypool caught it. That was the one where he fell on the ball, right? And got the wind knocked out of him?
Yeah, pretty sure it was, yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely the best throw of the night. But I thought he was okay. Dwayne Haskins, you can see the arm, just not all that impressive. His average depth of target was pretty low in that game. And like you said, Josh Dobbs had the best performance of the night, 4 for 6 with a touchdown. He had a good game. The ground game, I thought the numbers didn't tell the whole story. Najee Harris lost 4 yards on his last rush, but overall was having a pretty good game prior to that. Got a little more burn than I thought he would. But I still thought that the running game did what it had to do. And I forget the exact total, but I know that they were over 50% run success rate, which, hey, that's all I'm asking for. That's what we were saying last year, right? And they did that.
Yeah, we just need the successful run rate. It doesn't have to be pretty, but if you're running successfully more than 50% of the time, which is a lot, we could be happy. It doesn't matter what outside people say if there's not that great out of yards per carry. Honestly, I'm not expecting a big yards per carry from Najee this year. I mean, he's kind of bigger, not necessarily slower, but it's like tougher for bigger guys, I feel like. Maybe not Derrick Henry, but I just want the successful run rate is the point.
I believe Le'Veon Bell averaged, 3.5 yards per carry his first season in the NFL. So it really wasn't until he cut down in weight that he really picked up. What do you think about the offensive line?
They were kind of scary. I'm trying to, like, in my mind, separate what happened in the Eagles game and what happened in the Cowboys game, because I was like, in my head I was thinking, oh, they got so many penalties early and it really ruined Mason Rudolph's strides, but that was actually the Eagles game. In the Cowboys game, I thought they were a little bit better against not so great edge rushers. Even the Cowboys, like, starters aren't that great off the edge, so I thought that they did another all right. It's kind of just like the starting quarterbacks. What did you think of the offensive line through that game?
I thought they were okay. I thought Dan Moore and Kendrick Green played pretty well in that game. Not a whole lot going on. Was there any sacks in this game? Josh Dobbs got sacked once. I felt like sometimes they had trouble with pushing the line of scrimmage against the Cowboys, but generally I thought they held up pretty well. Wasn't overly impressed with Joe Haig. I thought Dan Moore played well. Rashad Coward was okay. I'm struggling to think of guys who stuck out in that game from a pass blocking or run blocking standpoint.
Yeah.
On the receivers, Claypool was pretty good, had that nice long catch. Not a whole lot going on. A bunch of targets spread around. Isaiah McCoy was targeted once and he's been cut. Matthew Sexton had a nice punt return. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Yeah, I felt like this game wasn't as interesting as the Eagles game. Like, I failed to... It's been a while and I don't have the perfect memory, but I feel like I remember so much more from the Eagles game when we get to that. But we got to get to the defense first from this game.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about the defense, but I will point out that the outside linebackers were fantastic. Cassius Marsh did he have a sack in this one? Yes, he did. Alex Highsmith had one early. Quincy Roche, Abdullah Anderson also had a sack, and Jamir Jones was putting pressure on the Cowboys. And I believe they had just the one interception by Donovan Steiner. But a bunch of big plays made by the defense in this game. Hence, the Cowboys only finishing with 3 points.
Yeah, I thought they all did really well. And again, highlighted by Alex Highsmith. All I've been hearing about is how he's been improving this year. Just going to camp, that his explosiveness off the snap has been incredible. And I mean, I saw that. Like in the preseason, I saw that. Funny enough, 2 Steelers have the quickness off the line from Amazon's statistical collection. Like, I forget what it's called. Do you know what it's called?
NFL's Next Gen.
Yeah,
stats.
NFL's Next Gen stats that are powered by Amazon. They track the get-off times, how fast a player's off the snap. And the Steelers have 2 of the top 5, and neither are Alex Highsmith, but it really feels like it. Jamir Jones, who's been excellent so far through the preseason, he is the new Ola Daney, new Tuzar Skipper of edge rushers. Every year there's one that's like, this guy's uncuttable, and he's so going to get cut. I'm over it now. Like, I don't care about that, but it's him and then Cassius Marsh. The Steelers are really good at getting the snap count right for whatever reason. It's got to be Keith Butler with all these guys being good at it, because it's TJ Watt does it too. When he plays, Alex Highsmith looks really fast off it, and now you have these 2 guys that are competing for a roster spot that are in the top 5 of preseason players so far of getting off the snap. So really impressive work by Keith Butler, even working with the young guys to, give them a shot.
And as far as specialists go, we had a great performance from Presley Harvin III, and Sam Sloman was bad, and he has since been cut.
Yeah. Harvin did a good job in his game. He got the whole game to himself to punt all 4 times. So, and he did well. He averaged 45.8 yards per punt, and then 3 of them were inside the 20. So, you can't really get much better than that.
All right, let's transition to the Week 1 game against the Eagles. The Steelers win in comeback fashion against the Eagles 24-16. Let's start with the punting since we just finished there. Jordan Berry got all 4 punts in this one, and he actually responded with a pretty darn good game himself. 4 for an average of 44 yards and 2 of them down to inside the 20. I think 2 of them were inside the 10. So another good performance from Barry. And you know what? I'm all for it. I want to see both of these guys performing really well. And if the Steelers traded Brad Wing for a 7th-round pick before, I have to think that Jordan Berry can pick up a 7th. And if he can do that, you recoup the 7th you took Presley Harvin with, and therefore it's a wash.
Yeah, doesn't even matter at that point. But yeah, Barry needed this competition. Obviously, like he's really performing really well. I mean, the average was less than Harvin's in this, but I'm not really looking at that. I think that Barry's hang time and that the distance in terms of the game, like where the game was at, I thought he did really well. He's definitely competing for this spot. I mean, we saw with Matt Weil. I tweeted out on Twitter that if this is even remotely close, if Harvin only has a slight edge, they're going to give it to Barry. It's just the difference is Harvin is a draft pick, so that is coming into play. But I mean, it doesn't. Matt Weil outperformed Barry in every single way in that preseason he was with us, and they said no familiarity, please, because that's just what they like. So if it's close, they're probably going to go with Barry.
Elsewhere, I believe it was just Chris Boswell kicking, but either way, it doesn't matter because Sam Sloman was cut. Quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph, I didn't feel like he had much of a chance in this one. He did have one long completion to, I believe it was Deontay Johnson, where he dropped it in the bucket. Largely struggled just in terms of having enough time to throw the ball in this one. Was only sacked once and did complete 8 of his 9 passes, most of them coming on the long pass to Johnson. I felt like he played okay given the circumstances, but I didn't think he had much of a chance.
Yeah, this is the game that I really focus on for the quarterback competition. This is the game that everyone said Haskins is so much better. And Mason Rudolph, like his first drive was destroyed by penalties. I'm pretty sure 3 penalties. One I remember specifically was Freiermuth's first snap on offense. He got a holding penalty. Then 2 of the other offensive linemen got penalties. I forget what exactly, but I just remember that his drives got destroyed when they were actually moving, and it's just like, and then what can you do? Like, there's really not much you can do if your team is getting penalties. Like, they need to play smarter than that, and that was on Mason Rudolph's drives. And then also the offensive line that was in front of Mason Rudolph was awful. It was like the worst I had seen in the line. Like they were getting spun around. It was a really, really tough time for the starting offensive line they put out. And it makes sense. The Eagles are really deep at pass rusher. They're traditionally a team that's kept a lot of defensive linemen, and you saw guys like Javon Hargrave starting here. Like Javon Hargrave came out and was on the starting defensive lineman, and we know how good he is. So the offensive line, when Mason Rudolph was in, really, really struggled, and it got much better when Dwayne Haskins came in, and they kind of switched out the lines and they put in different combinations. I thought that putting in Dan Moore was so huge for them, and taking Joe Haig off was also huge for them.
Sorry, I had my mic on mute there. So, what'd you think of Haskins' performance? Because he definitely played really well.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I don't want to go on the other side and say, no, Haskins sucks and Rudolph is the answer, because that's not how I feel either. I think that Haskins did well. I think that Haskins likes to throw off he doesn't like to set his feet before throwing enough. But if he could just work on that, then he'd be great. Because I felt like every time that he was trying to throw when he was moving around, like he wouldn't get his feet set, and then the ball was like a little wobbler or it wasn't going. And he has the arm strength. I know he does. I've seen the cannon he has. He's one of the biggest arms, like, out of his draft class. But, like, if you're not throwing accurately, you could have the biggest arm you want. You're not going to be a good quarterback. So, I felt like that should be an emphasis for Haskins, is just getting his feet set so he could throw the ball more accurately. And then he'll be good. I think that they both did pretty well in this game. I thought that it was an improvement over the first game. I thought they figured out the offense a little bit better overall. I thought they had a better time finding the open guys. And I'd say that Rudolph was slightly better in this game, but Haskins is like breathing right down his neck. Like it's getting close.
Yeah, so that's a good point, is that Haskins did play really well, and I think that he did himself a lot of favors by playing well. I also don't think Rudolph played bad necessarily. I thought he played relatively well. He just didn't have much of a chance. And Josh Dobbs was the third quarterback in, and unlike his performance the previous week, did not make the most of his opportunity this time around. Was 5 of 6 for 30 yards, but threw a really bad interception where he just stared down his target. So he needed to have a flawless camp and preseason, in my opinion, just to make the roster, and I'd be shocked if he's kept on the roster.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. I think he has a practice squad spot for him waiting, so because he's a little bit more mobile and he offers that a different kind of quarterback in case.
Good in the room.
Yeah,
too.
It's just good for the room. He's a smart guy to keep around, and I think that's where he's gonna reside, assuming no team picks him up before then. But I think he's going to be a practice squad guy. He's going to be the quarterback 4 for the team.
So that leaves just 2 and 3, and you kind of touched on it a bit. It's kind of close between Haskins and Rudolph. I'll be honest, unless if Haskins gets legitimate time with the ones here, and there's very little time left here, I think that Rudolph is still the number 2 guy, and Haskins is going to be the game day inactive, barring something crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to really... He has to pull away from Rudolph. He has to basically have a perfect game tomorrow against the Lions, tomorrow being the 20th. But I think he's going to need that, and then probably one more. But Ben is getting some time in this game, so his time is going to be cut into. Or maybe it's just taking away from Josh Dobbs' time. I'm not sure. Dobbs is probably going to come in still for a little bit, but he doesn't have as much time as he did the first 2 games. He needed to start early with the first 2 games and show that he's separated from Rudolph, which he didn't. They're like neck and neck. And to me, Rudolph has been slightly better. He's like breathing down Rudolph's neck, but he needed to separate himself, and he hasn't.
Let's think about this for a second. Ben is probably going to play, the first quarter, maybe a drive into the second quarter tomorrow?
Yeah, about a quarter.
So let's assume that he plays just a little into the second quarter. How do you handle the quarterback breakdown after this? Because, frankly, I think Mason Rudolph has done just about all he needs to. I'd either play Haskins next with the 2s and then Rudolph with the 3s, or I'd just sit Rudolph down for this game, period, and let Haskins play the next 2 quarters and let Dobbs mop up in game 3.
I think that's the smartest move you could do. I was thinking the exact same thing, where it's like either you let... I want Haskins to come in after Ben first regardless, to give him the best chance, because it's always been Mason Rudolph starting, and then Haskins came in so far through preseason. It would be still Haskins coming in second, but it would be before Mason Rudolph. Give him a chance with some better players, see how he reacts up against a little bit slightly better defense as well, because when you get when you get second tier on your team, you're probably also getting second tier on the defense. So that would be good as well, because something that's undermined is Haskins is throwing against like the depth of teams when Rudolph is playing against the number 2s on teams. So it's something to evaluate to see the matchups there as well.
And then in the 4th game, I think I'd honestly just either do a split half and half between Haskins and Dobbs, or let Haskins take 3 of the 4 quarters.
I think that's smart. I think what you have is a smart idea.
All right, the rest of the offense, running backs, there was a big performance from the ground game. I mean, they had the ball most of the second half. Tony Brooks-James showing off pretty well, so did Jalen Samuels. Anyone stand out from the running backs?
Literally everyone was a winner in the running back room. Everyone besides Benny Snell, because Benny Snell couldn't play. Like, that was so unfortunate. Everyone got a chance to do something good. Najee Harris scared me a little bit because he's going for the hurdles. It's part of his game. I'm like, please, man, you need to make it through the regular season, please. He only got 2 carries officially. I mean, one got taken away from the penalty. I'm pretty sure one of the hurdles got taken away from the penalty, but...
That is correct. I believe that was the Freiermuth.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Holding.
So he had more carries than 2, but officially he only gets 2 carries for 10 yards and his day is over. I thought Jalen Samuels looked really, really good in this game. I thought that he had a really solid game, pushing for him to make the roster over Benny Snell and not get cut. Tony Brooks-James as the closer with I thought he did really well. Technically finished with the most yards and the best yards per carry of the day of any rusher. So I thought that he did well, and he kind of did it consistently. It was at the end of the game, and he's a new guy, so he's not likely to a new guy this year, I should say. I mean, this is his second time on the roster. I think like he was on the roster now 2 years ago, but he's just unlikely chance. But he had the best game, so maybe he'll get more time in this next one. I thought Anthony McFarland did well. I just really thought that they all did well. It just the losers were Benny Snell and Balaj because they just weren't able to play because they were injured.
Offensive line, I thought the starting group did not play well, and I thought the rest of them did.
Yeah, the starting group was really, really tough. Joe Haig was absolutely getting destroyed out there. He graded positively on Pro Football Focus for whatever reason. I have no idea why. I don't know what they saw.
That guy is killing it in his preseason grades right now.
Yes, I don't know.
Oh, you know who they love too, though, is Dan Moore, and
I do understand Dan Moore. Dan Moore is solid. He is going to win the swing tackle job. I said it from the get-go, and he is going to win it. I don't see it coming. Kendrick Green still has some growing pains. Speaking of things I was talking about and will stand by, is just Kendrick Green just really probably wasn't ready for a gig so soon, and the Steelers are kind of thrusting him right into it, which I hope it works out, and I hope it's just he's working out the kinks now. But I thought he was more of a guy that needed to sit and develop for a little bit, because center, he was only like a center for I think like 12 games in his career in college or something like that, because he wasn't a full-time center. He started as a guard, and I looked at him as a guard when I looked at him pre-draft. He's got some growing pains. He's going to struggle against power because he's undersized, and we saw that in this game. And it is a little bit worrisome when this is the guy that is likely your center going into the season. And when he goes up against ones, it's only going to be tougher, but just hope he works out those kinks.
Yeah, I think you saw a prime example of the things he struggled with in college, and that was bigger, stronger defensive linemen at center. Those shorter arms, I don't know if that's something that he's ever going to really get much better with because it's just such a natural disadvantage. I mean, I suppose he can get better at it, but I think it's something he's always going to struggle with. Just hopefully not to the same degree. But when you see a big, powerful defensive lineman practically put him on skates, those are things that you can expect to see with growing pains this year.
Yeah. I stand by that Green is going to need a season. I think that Steelers fans are going to want to kick him out after this year, and then next year he's going to be a beast. I think that he just needs this season to develop, and I think the Steelers put him in a bad position more than anything. So,
defensively, the Steelers had some troubles with the deep pass in this game, or rather catching long runs with the Quez Watkins 79-yard touchdown on the screen pass. Pretty horrible effort from, why am I blanking on the guy's name? Trey Norwood, the safety out there. I skipped receivers. I'm sorry. Let's go back and is there any receivers you wanted to look at?
I thought Anthony Johnson did well, and then Cody White came in late, and Cody White just got like 3 catches in a row, and I thought he did well to play catch up because White has been injured like all of training camp, so that those were like most of it, like his first preseason snaps, and I thought he used them effectively, and hopefully we see more Cody White going into next game. I thought I liked Cody White the most.
And defensively, the Steelers got more pressure in this game. Just 2 sacks, though. Again, these guys weren't really on the field much in the second half, but Jamir Jones, another sack. Isaiah Loudermilk and Quincy Roche split a sack. And they picked off Nick Mullins twice. Those interceptions went to who? I know Lafayette.
Justin Lane.
Justin Lane did.
Yes,
that's
sir.
Right. So, yeah, any outstanding thoughts on these guys?
Again, I know I talked about it for the Cowboys game, but Jamir Jones has been really, really solid. There is an actual battle going on between him and Cassius Marsh for the final roster spot.
Oh, and don't forget Quincy Roche.
Yeah, Quincy Roche is there, but I don't think he's as performing as well as Cassius Marsh and Jamir Jones. But he is part of the fight. I mean, he could have a really good game next week where he absolutely destroys. I thought Isaiah Loudermilk looked so good, causing pressure. Like his stat sheet. Honestly, for a preseason game, his stat sheet was pretty solid. I mean, finished with 2 tackles, half a sack, 1 tackle for a loss, a pass defensed, and another quarterback hit. I thought that he did really well, and but I thought mostly his pressure was really good in that game.
All right, so as we move on now to talk about other things that are going on, where do you want to go to now? We could talk about.
I think that because it happened in the middle of the game, basically the Eagles game had just started for 10 minutes, right, or at something,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then out of nowhere, the Steelers have traded for Jaguars linebacker Joe Schobert, the former Brown. So I want to go there because I feel like it cut into that game. It felt so weird coming in the middle of a game. It's like someone, I don't know who would have broke that news, like who broke that news right as they were about to play? Like who would cause that distraction? I have no idea. It's kind of crazy.
Kevin Colbert saw the first play with his linebackers who were not playing well and said something's got to be done.
No, yeah. Oh, we didn't even touch upon that. Yeah, the middle linebackers were really bad in that Eagles game. They just didn't have a good time.
So Robert Spillane has had a tough preseason so far. Devin Bush with his first game back from his ACL tear, so I don't want to look too much into Bush's bad play in last week's game, but Spillane has been having trouble, and I think that was the primary motivation. But as we'll get into here, there's a lot of levels to this. But Schobert as a player, let's talk about him real quick. A guy entering his 6th NFL season, a former Pro Bowler with the Cleveland Browns, has certainly made his mark on the league, racking up a ton of tackles and has played well in coverage throughout his career.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I was going to say, let's just talk about Joe Schobert because he's a guy that's made his mark on the league through coverage and just the fact that he's racked up a ton of tackles during his 6-year career.
Yeah, he's been really solid. He was one of my favorite Browns players when he was on the Browns. I was happy to see him go when he went to the Jaguars because it was like coming off when he had that killer game against the Steelers, like to end the season. I think that he didn't fit with the new system, with the new coach, like with Urban Meyer. He's an expensive player, which made it even more interesting that the Steelers traded for him because it was a lot of cap hit to take. We didn't really know the details until like 2 days later of what was happening, but all in all,
yeah, that was not a normal move. I know that we always talk about Kevin Colbert picking up someone. This is not like a typical move. It's not like him to acquire someone with a pretty significant cap hit and salary.
Yeah, not at this stage in the game. Usually the Steelers are pressed right up against the cap, but they really found a love for those voidable years in contracts. They're like, oh, baby, I found a new way to restructure contracts, basically, by pushing money to future years. I'm doing that every single contract. I feel like almost every single contract that they've done so far since then have had voidable years on it. I really can't think of one other than Stephon Tuitt's. I think they restructured Tuitt so they didn't add a voidable year. Everyone else, I'm pretty sure they added voidable years. So like, we could kick money down into like 5 years from now instead of just next year. Hell yeah, dude. I feel like that's been the sentiment.
Yeah, so the Jaguars, new system, they're trying to find more of a thumper, apparently, type linebacker in Dakota Allen or Damian Wilson to pair next to Miles Jack, the guy that they let run around, which is kind of interesting because we've been talking for a while now about how the Steelers have been employing those kinds of linebackers, usually just the one runaround guy in either Shazier or Devin Bush, and that seems to be a dying breed. So the fact that the Jaguars are going against that grain, I gotta question that, to be honest with you. One of the interesting things about Joe Schobert is that after his first practice, which he wore number 45 for, and he said that is not a permanent number change, is that he's expecting to be wearing the green dot as the communicator for the defense, and he's also expecting to be the primary dime backer, which means he's the every down linebacker and not Devin Bush. What did you think about that?
I think that it made this trade really much more required than we thought. I thought that Bobby Spills was going to be the guy. I thought we were okay with that. I thought he seems solid. But apparently he's just been having a really bad camp, and I mean, apparently Devin Bush isn't ready for the green dot duties in terms of the coaching staff's eyes. So this trade needed to happen because I understand giving Schobert the green dot, like starting this preseason game, like after he's gotten some experience. They gave him the green dot the first day before he even knew the playbook completely. Like, that is wild to me that you're immediately starting him with the green dot to call plays when he doesn't even know what he's exactly calling yet. I'm sure he's a fast worker. I'm sure that's why they traded for him and trusted him to do that, but that's still wild to me when you have tons of guys with experience on the roster now.
Yeah, I mean, he's long had a reputation of being a smart football player, so getting him with the idea of using him to call plays is not crazy in of itself. However, the fact that Devin Bush was picked at number 10 overall, you traded up for the guy, you'd think that he'd be the guy for this. But do you think it says anything about the Steelers coaching staff? Maybe not necessarily teaching him a lesson, but maybe showing that they are not necessarily pleased with maybe his maturity or his attitude given everything that happened this offseason with him and his whole Twitter nonsense. And the fact that maybe he hasn't been focusing enough on the mental aspect, the football acumen aspect of the game.
It's definitely a possibility that it's like, hey, like, this is a warning. Like, we're getting a guy to do the job we wanted you to do because you're not ready, and we wanted you to be, and we drafted you this highly to do so. But, and obviously he's not replacing you, but, like, we can replace you if we have to. And I think that's kind of the message they could be sending. But more so than anything, I think they were more worried about Robert Spillane and then also the play calling duties. It sucks that Devin Bush can't do the play calling duties on defense, but it really, there's so many different reasons why they could have gotten Joe Schobert. Also, so they could cover wide receiver ones better with middle linebackers because they love doing that.
Yep. Yeah. that was like the first thing I said to you was like, now we can go from Spillane covering slot receivers to Joe Schobert. Great.
Classic.
Yeah.
Heck
so,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I think it was a great move and a fantastic move by Kevin Colbert. And worst case scenario, Devin Bush is just your 2-down linebacker, but he should be helpful anyways. And best case scenario, he takes over those duties midseason.
Yeah. I mean,
by the way, what do you think about his sort of response to those questions about his Twitter usage this offseason? Did you see that? I really was not impressed with his response to that.
Yeah, no, like he basically said that his Twitter is mine, right? And it's like not a reflection of the team or something like that. It's a while ago
he basically said they can't control him, which is not necessarily true because Mike Tomlin has stopped a player from using social media for a period of time before. So, I mean, that's not exactly true. I was pretty disappointed to hear him say that. And again, not that Twitter is the be-all, end-all, but you and I talked about him and, like, he was acting really shady, and then he was tweeting about something very unsavory. And, I understand it's your Twitter, but at the same time, you're allowed to be a professional, too.
Yeah, I mean, you're not in college anymore. He's on the national stage. So, I mean, I wish it would be better, but it is what it is, I guess. So, hopefully he matures in the future, but right now it's not looking like it.
All right, so let's move on to the other big signing from earlier this offseason. That was Melvin Ingram, signing to basically replace Alex Highsmith as the swing edge rusher. Has been playing well as a pass rusher and run stopper in camp. Not really a big coverage guy, but we kind of knew that. A guy that didn't have a big productive year last year, but still graded relatively well, but struggled through some injuries.
Yeah, originally I wanted Houston, and then Houston wanted to be in Baltimore, so he's now in Baltimore, and Ingram's now with the Steelers. Basically for the same deals, but I like Ingram after watching his tape. I won't lie, I was kind of like looking at the stats. I'm like, well, he kind of sucks, but like his pressure, he's kind of like a Stephon Tuitt kind of player, where it's like his pressure is beyond. It's amazing. Like the pressure that he causes is something that doesn't come up on the stat sheet, but he causes a lot of it. He's going to wreak havoc. He's going to force bad throws, and I like the signing a lot more. now than when I originally saw it. I think it's good, and I think he's performed well from what it sounds like coming out of training camp. I liked the Melvin Ingram move.
Yeah, and at this point, you shouldn't, at his age and with his injury history, I think it's a mistake to be asking him to be a premier pass rusher, but this is a guy that's had double-digit sack seasons before. He's been a productive player, and if Alex Highsmith takes the leap that you think that he could, and Ingram is a healthy player this year, this could be a better edge rusher group than it was last season.
If Highsmith truly took a step forward from where he ended off last year, there's a very good chance. There is a very, very good chance that happens. Because Ingram's probably probably better than where Highsmith was last year. Maybe the same. Highsmith has the potential to be better than Bud Dupree was already, which is really, really nutty. Because last year, like, he was really, really good in the starts that he got after Dupree's injury. Not as good as Dupree, but like he was higher. He had a bigger floor than when Dupree came in as a rookie. Highsmith's floor was much higher from where he started, and I mean, if he had really improved, like you said, again, it's gonna be like no noticeable difference. Like nothing happened to the edge rushing room going into the season.
Devontae Smith is breaking ankles.
Devontae Smith. Oh, I forgot. It's the Patriots Eagles tonight, right?
Yep, Devontae
Super Bowl
Smith
rematch.
just broke some ankles.
Classic. Unsurprising.
Yeah, so the Steelers also restructured the contract of Stephon Tuitt and added voidable years because that's what they do now. They
did add voidable years to him. So there's literally been no contract that they've had since basically figuring out that they could do that hasn't had voidable years. They've done it on every single contract that they've done.
Let me double check this. I'm fairly certain that they added voidable years to this. Yep. It's not official. Let me say that it's not official. According to Field Yates, the Steelers converted $7.925 million of his base salary into a signing bonus, creating $6.34 in cap space. The Steelers Depot says if Yates' numbers are correct, it likely means the Steelers added 3 voidable years.
Okay. Yeah, so for any major player that they added, there's been void years in the contract. So I said every contract, not the undrafted free agents, not the rookies, not like smaller guys like Miles Killebrew, which there might be in Killebrew's contract. It's just not someone that's like, it's a smaller contract. All the bigger contracts that they made this so far, they've put in those voidable years.
So as a result, the Steelers are according to overthecap.com, they have approximately $17,679,224 in cap space at the moment. Keep in mind, the Steelers use approximately $7 to $10 million of that already for regular season flexibility in case they have to add an Avery Williamson like they did last year and practice squad players. So that's anywhere from half to almost 2/3 of it already spoken for. But it could be signaling potential cushion for a TJ Watt extension or maybe one other additional signing. So I wouldn't think the Steelers are done here, but again, I don't think it's going to be a big deal either.
Yeah, I mean, they could still clear up cap space with a Joe Hayden extension. I'm pretty sure they could clear up some more cap space if they
Chris
wanted
Boswell
to.
could be restructured. That saves about an additional $1 million.
Yeah, so if they really wanted to, they could. This is a lot of cap space for them at this point. It's kind of weird because I feel like I feel like a little bit. I've kind of joked about the voidable years. They've kind of gone a little bit crazy with it. I feel like it's not been necessary for every contract. I guess I feel like kicking it down the road. They've always loved doing it with restructuring, but I feel like at some point it's just why are you doing this? I don't know if the Steelers are done. There still could be more trades to happen. There could be they're going to try and pick up a safety after the final wave of cuts, something like that. But that's a lot of money for a guy that's cut. Usually if a guy's getting cut like that, there's not going to be that many good players available worth more than $3 million APY. So I don't really know why they're carrying this much.
Do you think he's bracing for a potential Joe Hayden situation from 2017?
Maybe that's got to be what he's hoping for. Is like he thinks that someone's gonna get cut that he wants or something like that. I guess just in case. I guess that really is it. Why not have it for now, and then if there's someone there, you can immediately get them, and if they're not, you just have the extra cap space. It rolls over to next year anyway, so whatever's left over. So I guess it's really not that bad of a practice. It's just so weird to me. I don't know.
Well, it's either that or they're anticipating a larger cap charge from T.J. Watt's extension than maybe originally, meaning they might do something different with this contract too.
That is fair. They're not a team that usually gives up front money, but for T.J. Watt, they might have to.
So, anyways, major thing to get to is that the Steelers made 5 cut downs to get to 85 as they had to. Number 1 is tackle Brandon Walton, who was claimed by the Buccaneers. Kicker Sam Sloman, receiver Isaiah McCoy, defensive lineman Abdullah Anderson, and defensive back Steven Denmark.
Kind of surprised that someone from the Steelers got claimed. I usually, even when they're the bigger cut downs, on the first 5 to have someone already claimed, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know if he'll last with the Buccaneers. I can't say Brendan Walton made a lasting impact on me with the Steelers this offseason. Obviously, he did not make a lasting impact on the coaches, so good luck with the Buccaneers, I suppose. It's just weird to see someone claimed. I feel like the last one that got claimed was Deontay Spencer, who went to the Broncos. I think he's still their return man over there.
I will point out that the Buccaneers just recently had an injury along the offensive line, so that probably explains that. But yeah, none of those guys were really standing out. Other news, Chase Claypool sustained a minor ankle sprain after pass attempt in, I think, the second to last training camp practice the other day. Thankfully, he avoided major injury, and theoretically, he still could play tomorrow, but I think that's pretty doubtful. I think the next time we'll see him is in Orchard Park.
Yep, it just doesn't make sense. Let him heal. Luckily, it's not even the worst kind. It's not a high ankle sprain. It's a low one, so it shouldn't be too bad. It shouldn't be super lasting, but better to be careful, safe than sorry. Just wait till week 1, let him play. He got his preseason reps. It's not like he needs to be reintroduced to football. I think that he's shut down up until the regular season. I echo your sentiment.
All right, still talking about a possible T.J. Watt extension. We just mentioned that he's still not taking part in team practice. Seems as though he's waiting for a deal to be done, but has not been done yet. Are you starting to get worried? How do you feel about all this?
No, I'm not worried. I think that an extension will be done before week 1 against the Bills, so I'm not really worried. If it gets into the regular season, then I'll be worried because the Steelers don't really do extensions once the season starts. So then I'd be a little bit worried because now you're talking about in the off season. Well, first of all, I'd be worried because there's something wrong because you just should have gave T.J. Watt a blank check. And it should have been basically that easy to say, okay, yeah, we'll pay you $30 million a year, make you the first $30 million defensive player or whatever. And it should have been that easy. But then also, now you're talking about you have to work on Minka's extension too in this offseason. And that's on top of if you don't get Joe Hayden signed to extension now. It's a lot of working on some high-profile players on the defense, all on one side of the ball. For that, so I would, if T.J. Watt doesn't get done, like right now, before the season starts, I would be very, very concerned.
Do you think Joe Hayden gets done?
I don't know. I'm so back and forth on that because, like, on one hand, yeah, he's really good and he's been really solid since coming over, but he's older. He's in his 30s, and cornerbacks fall off the face of the earth just so quickly. Like, the most common I think of is like Josh Norman. Josh Norman had one great year, amazing year, and it's just like, he fell off the face of the earth. That's it. Done.
How about Darrelle Revis, an even higher profile?
Yeah, Darrelle Revis, and that's even better because Darrelle Revis was obviously very good for a while. Probably should be a Hall of Famer, eventually. But like he just one year just began sucking, and that's all it takes. And then if the Steelers are handicapped to that, especially a $12 million player, because who knows what Hayden's going to go for. I'm not apparently like top end cornerback money right now is, I think Xavier Howard just restructured his deal to like 19. So that would put Hayden in like the 13, 12, 13, 14 category. That's a lot of money for an older guy. So I don't know. It will lessen the cap hit this year, which in any other year where the Steelers are pressed up against the cap, I'd say, oh yeah, this is probably a good idea. Push it to later. But like the Steelers don't need cap space either right now. So it's like, it's just I'm so back and forth. I think that they should add one more year on, but I would rather wait till after the season to do that one. I'd rather
see how he plays.
Yeah, see how he plays, and then so you're not strapped to him until afterwards. Because if he plays good, I'm willing to give him another year, maybe 2, if it's cheap.
Any concern about Stephon Tuitt not practicing yet?
No, I think that he's just gotta take his time. He might have an injury that's not disclosed. There could be something wrong. I'm not really worried. I know Tuitt's going to show up when the season starts.
They wouldn't have restructured a contract for a guy that they didn't think was going to play.
Nope, I think we're good there.
And then, lastly, as far as I know, James Washington, there was a report that came out that he asked for a trade, and then a report that came out that said that he did not ask for a trade. And then when asked about it, Washington did not say that he had, but he also didn't deny that he had either. So let's talk about James Washington potentially asking for a trade, and then on top of that, the likeliness of it happening.
So I don't blame Washington at all. He's unfortunately been overshadowed ever since he got there. There was always guys in front of him. It always seemed like there was 3 guys in front of him. So now with Juju back for one more year, Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, his role is wide receiver 4. And that sucks. Like, he was drafted in round 2. Deontay Johnson was drafted after him. I believe, technically, on a pick basis, Chase Claypool was picked after him. No, Chase, because the Steelers sucked that year because of Devlin Hodges. So, that's not true. But, what's it called? Still, though, it's just he's seeing guys that came in after him getting more time, and I don't blame him that he wants to go get a chance on another team to get paid. This is his contract year, so he wants to get as much money as possible, and it's not going to be on the Steelers. Sadly, the Steelers are now heading towards a run-first team, which even further is going to hurt his chances of making it onto the field. Where they also drafted a second tight end, who will probably which will ask for more 2 tight end sets. You know, like there's a lot of stuff playing into
more
this.
Fullback this year too.
Yeah, more fullback with an offensive coordinator that is accustomed to to Derek Watt. So it's just for me, I think James Washington's always been a guy that brings his lunch pail to work, keeps his head down, and does his job. And I've appreciated that, and I respect him wanting a trade. And I think he's handling it like a professional, like where he's like, I'm not going to come out and talk about the team. And I know that if the Steelers don't trade him, he'll come out there and play the best he can. Still, he's not. I don't picture him making a fuss. I think that the Steelers should probably honor it. Going back, James Washington is one of the guys where I was like, I might have been wrong on the pre-draft process. I said that he had potential to be the best wide receiver in this class, which is, saying someone has the potential isn't necessarily wrong, and I still think he could. I mean, he could still have a chance, but he hasn't had a chance with the Steelers. Supposedly, the Vikings have came and asked about him. The NFL Rumors account tweeted that, and they've been pretty good with their stuff. They usually get their stuff first. Like, they had Quan Alexander signing with the Saints 2 weeks before he actually signed with the Saints. Like, he knows when people are contacting. There might have been no actual trade coming through. The Vikings might have just been doing their due diligence, but that's the team. The only team so far that I've heard is actually, even approached the Steelers about it, and that's not necessarily true. But I don't know how plausible this trade is for the Steelers. I mean, wide receiver 4 after Washington leaves is Ray McLeod, and that's not very good.
That's not exciting at all. Honestly,
No.
I'm not even married to the idea of McLeod being on the 53. The Steelers are definitely have their best position as receiver, but Washington is a part of that, and beyond the top 4 guys, there's really not much.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers would basically have to get a wide receiver back in the trade that was maybe slightly worse than Washington, but, why would you do that when you could just have Washington?
Yeah, exactly. Like, the only position you could acquire, and there's no point in trading for a pick since the Steelers are in win now mode. You could trade for another receiver, which, like you just said, what's the point? And a backup safety, which if Malik Hooker is signing for basically the vet minimum, I'd say, look, James, I appreciate you, I understand you, but as you just saw in practice the other day, we are one play away, one Chase Claypool injury, one Juju Smith-Schuster injury, one Deontay Johnson injury away from needing you full time.
Yeah, it's very plausible too, very plausible. So, I hope that we hold on to Washington for this year. They might respect his wishes because, again, he's a professional, but I guess we'll just have to see. I respect where he's coming from, too. Like, I
totally get it. Totally get it.
Yeah.
I will say that Juju coming back was probably the worst thing in the world for him, personally. Because he got his... That was his chance.
Yeah. He got his starting role taken away. Just like that.
All right. We're running about an hour, just over an hour here, so I think we're probably good to wrap this one up. We can talk more about the 53-man roster after we recap this upcoming game tomorrow. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for joining us again on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. We hopefully should have some pretty exciting things coming up with the podcast and with the website that we're working on. Not going to be anything right away, but we're hoping to do that and maybe some rebranding, changing of the logo here. So we have some exciting things going on, which you should hopefully see somewhat soon. Austin, thanks for joining me again, and I'm glad that we were able to get this done officially. All right, maybe I shouldn't say that because we should post it before I say something like that, but what is done is done. I'm not going to delete it. So, feel free to follow us on Twitter at Stronger_Steel to see tweets about the Steelers game tomorrow and just retweeting about Steelers news in general, thoughts on things that are going on. And you can also check out our website, StrongerThanSteelNFL.blogspot.com, and check out our YouTube page where we post our episodes. And we're now on Anchor, which is going to be posting our episodes on Spotify as well. Until next time, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. John Keir, Austin Davidson say so long tonight.
Bye, everybody.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.